Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Welcome to the therapy hour for today's very poignant and very powerful session. Just adjusting myself right now. I'm just gonna pin right here. So bear with me a second as I go through this. Welcome. Hi. How are you all doing? Good to see some of the faces that have been here before. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it as always. The topic today is one in which I think everybody have been feeling right now. So we're going to get straight into it shortly. Welcome everyone. Welcome. So I'm going to be typing up. Today I'm going to learn how to do the pinning. So give me a second. There we go. And I'm going to post it. And I'm going to tap it. Pin comment. There we go. Finally did it. How are you all doing? Are you okay? All right. I am good. I am well. I am motivated. And I'm ready for today's session. So just don't mind me while I just adjust this so my face is not all up in the screen so much. Welcome. Thank you all for joining me today. I appreciate it as always. Today's session was going to be about grief. And for those ones that, maybe joining me right now, expecting grief, apologies, but that will be covered at later sessions. There comes a moment in every therapy with clients, with myself, there comes a moment in which planned session is interrupted by live events. What I mean by that is usually with my clients, I've got strategies and structures planned weeks, sometimes months in advance in how I want the session to progress. And the client will come in and something powerful that's shaking the core of their existence will come in that warrants immediate attention. And this week, such a thing has occurred where, although I plan to talk about one thing, I cannot be the psychotherapist I want to be and ignore it and just stick to the programmed session. So for today's session, if you indulge me, I'm going to be covering what I have termed collective trauma. And it's a form of grief, because grief in itself is trauma. It's something that's affecting us, something that we are unable to cope with, we are overwhelmed with. So grief is a form of trauma. But what I want to do today is focus solely on the collective trauma that has happened. Although it's happened across the seas to where I'm based right now, the reason why I've termed it collective trauma, rather than just racial trauma, I termed it collective trauma because I believe all the people that are currently here right now, I can ascertain some of the mood, the feelings, and I haven't spoken to all of you, but I feel connected to you to be able to gauge, I guess the term is having a finger on the pulse, for me to be able to tap in to my inner core, my inner self. And, actors describe this as breaking the fourth wall. And as a psychotherapist, I do not normally put myself within the session. I am the invisible mirror here. But for this week, I myself have been personally touched by it. And I couldn't be silent without addressing it. Now, today's session is not an attempt to besmirch others. Today's session is about therapy still. And what that means is, how can we deal therapeutically with collective trauma? How do I deal with clients that have presented to me with trauma as the base of the presenting issue? How do I work with clients that have experienced trauma and currently going through what we term as post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise acronymed as PTSD. How do you start working with someone that has experienced an event or a series of events that has affected them so much it has changed the makeup of their psychology, it has changed the makeup of how they interact, socialize, and even internalize events. So today's session is going to, first of all, listen to some of the comments, some of the thoughts, some of the feelings that you guys are going through right now. And this is a platform. And I think 9 sessions ago, when I started this week, this session is what this platform was made for. This, in essence, is what it was about. It's about providing a platform where therapy can be used on a mass scale in order to help others that may be experiencing certain things that they may not be able to deal with in that moment. So trauma is going to be covered today. Collective trauma is going to be covered today. But I'm not a teacher that's going to be speaking at you. The whole point of therapy at its best, the whole point of therapy at its core is to give the client a voice and week after week see the client be emboldened to be able to speak and find their own voice, and able to express exactly what for so long they've hidden, because survival instincts have deemed it necessary and compulsory for them to hide those feelings so they can go through everyday life without breaking down. So that is what the essence of this is. So I invite all of you, if you want to jump on, if you want to speak for 2 minutes, 5 minutes to just talk about how you're feeling right now, how you've been feeling for the last few days, what are the thoughts that have been going through your mind. This village is open and is quite supportive to be able to hear you, give you a platform for you to speak. We've got ears to be able to listen to you directly, hear you, and start the healing process. I will talk about the strategies, I will talk about the terms in a short while, but to start it off is about opening the floor to all of you to be able to express, talk, and shout in some cases about what you are feeling right now. And maybe for once, you don't feel as isolated as you may have felt in regards to your thoughts or your feelings. Like, oh, I'm the only one that's going through this. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Nobody would understand. I think this week, there's a fair chance that you will have a team, an army of people that will understand exactly what you're going through. All right? Deja, thank you for commenting. You know, sometimes I may be reading the comments and I'm not fully engaged because I'm looking here and I'm looking there. So for today's session, send your comments in and also jump on. Don't be shy, you know, jump on and we'll be able to have a one-to-one session just for a short while, just so I can hear you, so I can give you the opportunity for you to feel heard and listen to. All right? So DJ is coming with just feeling quite sad. How this can be going on. Sadness on one hand, and it seems perplexity and confusion and just disbelief is what I'm hearing from that comment. The sadness for anyone that may be unaware of what I'm talking about, the topic in which I'm talking about, the context in which I'm referring to, the last few weeks has been quite a difficult one for someone that looks, sounds, and feels like me. And what I mean by that, as a black man, as a black man in the United Kingdom, connecting to a black man or black men or black people in the United States of America, or connected to black men and women in African countries, or connected to black men and women in European countries, connected to the black men and women chased out of Chinese and other countries around the world. There's a uniformity, there's a connectivity that it's not limited to nationality, but limited to race. And collective trauma, as I've termed it, is a way in which we can all understand, just by seeing an image or a look or a word, can all understand each other I may not speak Swahili, but a Swahili brother may not speak Yoruba, but there's a connectivity there that goes beyond language, that goes beyond the borders or the colors of a passport. And that's what I'm talking about here. You know, I've talked about sadness. We've got anger as well. Yes, I'm going to touch on anger shortly. And anger seems to be a very common denominator in all of this. They just come in with friends who are staying quiet, silent, and questioning people. And if we're not careful, in my field, we'll look at that, and what will come from that is a sense of paranoia. Start questioning certain things or putting so much meaning into silence, action, inaction. And that is exactly what's going on through here. And if we're discussing trauma and a definition of trauma, some of the things in which you've said comes into it. Anger, sadness, despair, and trying to uplift others, trying to be the voice, the power, the reason. But your core, your primary senses are of anger. So definitely, that is what I connect with right now. Now, when we're going through therapy, it's about leaving the space open. And I just leave the space open for you guys to continue typing how you're feeling, to have a place and a voice here to feel heard. The weight, heaviness, despondency. Yes. Yes. The anger, the sadness, the helplessness, overwhelming sadness. Now, the word overwhelming is quite important here because when we're talking about trauma is defined in many ways, but significantly, I'm not going to bore you with the DSM-5 definition of trauma, but trauma on its base level is an event that's occurred, that's happened to us, that overwhelms us and overwhelms our capacity to deal with it. So an event that's occurred, that's happened to us, that overwhelms our ability to deal with it. Feeling of loss, helplessness, yes. Yes. Those are feelings that messages, comments I've had this week, and to be fair, the last couple of weeks, because apart from Brother George Floyd, we're talking about also Mr. Aubrey that was shot, jogging, apparently, and trying to escape people that try and kill him. And what I want to do today is I want to try and understand why it feels so heavy right now. A lot of people have been asking me, yeah, but Nathaniel, this happens a lot. Why is this one affecting me so much? Why am I feeling this one at the pit of my stomach? Now, this is where I go into the definitions, into the structures, into trying to make sense of these feelings that you're feeling right now. The sense of feeling hated, feeling others are targeting you, feeling isolated, feeling like a target. You know, the irony of a target being destroyed, but feeling like a target, right? So that is what we want to talk about today. And sometimes in therapy, my job is to make sense of feelings. But at the same time, my job as a psychotherapist is to get out of the way and leave sense out of it and just stay and sit with the emotions. And that's what I want to do to start this off before we start making sense into it. And a lot of people do not, one of the questions that some people have said, but that is America, this is London, this is England. That's a little different over there. I understand that comment on this level, and I can understand why people may say that. Because logistically, they are correct. Their geography is accurate. America is not the United Kingdom. Totally get it. But it negates the experiences of people in this country or people in certain European countries, and in which United Kingdom is painted as one that hasn't got a race issue. And what we have to look at is There's a reason for that. And the reason for that, and I'm not talking in a political stance, I'm not bringing a political ideology here. I'm coming here as a truth sayer. As a psychotherapist, we look at events, we look at certain events that's affecting people, and seeing clients on a daily basis and working with clients that look like me, working with black clients and working within the mental health industry. One thing has been apparent for the last 12 years is that certain experiences are not validated. Certain experiences are not diagnosed clinically. And what I mean by that is certain experiences are brushed aside as just an event, just an incident. And the clients, physicians like myself, move in to look at other aspects of the person's life to find more meaning elsewhere. Where meaning could just be this person sitting in front of me, ever since they could think for themselves, ever since they could look at the world and recognize themselves within the world, they've been afflicted by their experience of race. And when I say afflicted rather than affected, it's done deliberately. They've been afflicted by this race pandemic, all right? And the word pandemic is used deliberately as well. It is everywhere. It is in the United States, it's here, and what we are comparing is overt and covert racism. And I've had clients that have been psychologically affected by the experiences of racism. And for so long, the clients I've spoken to have always come to me and stated, well, people tell me that I've got an attitude problem, or people tell me that I've got a chip on my shoulder, or people tell me stop playing the race card, or people tell me, listen, it's better over here than everywhere else. So what that does is it pushes your voice down. It pushes your point of view and your feeling and your experiences. It pushes it away. It makes it a non-event. It turns you into the accuser rather than into someone that's been affected by other people's behavior. So that has an effect as well. Psychologically speaking, trauma has an effect of changing your psychological wiring. If you trauma from a young age and you've had multiple events of traumatic events happen to you, that is looked at as complex trauma. And complex trauma, as defined examples are child abuse, rape, neglect, abandonment from childhood. But what is left out of that is the environmental experiences that we have, that we see, that changes the narrative of an independent human being. So now I'm not just thinking about what am I going to have for dinner, I'm also thinking about survival. I'm also thinking about the way I walk. I'm also thinking about the way my trousers is laid on my hips or my buttocks or whatever it may be. I'm also thinking about the tone of my voice. I'm also thinking about the eye contact I make, the posture, my intelligence. Certain things I should just let it go, or the banter. So many layers and layers and layers, and that has an effect. And what I believe everyone is feeling right now is that collective trauma of not just that one incident, a culmination of incidents, because that one incident underpins poetically the collective experience, underpins and graphically displays the collective experience of what a lot of people are feeling. And in that man's eyes and in that man's face, and watching it, I can only speak for myself, and usually in sessions I don't speak for myself. I speak from a position of viewing the client and trying to understand what's going through, and my mind is always working. I'm looking at different ways in which I can make or persuade my client to see things, to see exactly what's underlying, behind their issues. When I watched the video of this person being killed, when I watched the video of this person being murdered, and I use the word murder because murder implies certain things. Murder implies intention. And I choose my words very carefully. So what I do say is what I mean. When I saw the man, the human being, the father, the son, the friend, the brother, the uncle, and it's very important to humanize someone. When I saw him there, and it was midnight, writing notes, yes, because I'm a nerd and I love it. And I was here, it's at midnight, and I promised myself previously, because of the anger that was within me when I saw another video of another person getting killed and nothing happened, only when the video came to surface. I said to myself, Nathaniel, stop looking at some of these things right now because of the way it's affecting you. And it's very important for us to manage our mental health. A week, 2 weeks ago, I was talking about mental health awareness. I was talking about how to look after your mentals. I was talking about being careful what you put in, what you feed your mind and your spirit and your soul. So I was following my own advice. But I couldn't let this video go, so I watched this video. And I will express myself, if you'll allow me to connect myself with you. Sorry, somebody is deciding to call me at this time. So let me just turn this down because this person is deciding to speak to me. All right, so let me just come in here. How was I feeling? I was feeling disbelief. I was feeling angry. I was feeling sad. And I was feeling quite emotional. And as I'm recollecting my thoughts and my feelings right now, I'm transported back to that moment. And I was feeling quite teary. And I was like, hold on a minute. So I had to check myself. Okay, what's going on here? What's going on here that this is affecting me to the core? Because what I saw in that video could have been me. It could have been my brother. It could have been my friends. And I felt a connection, not only to the way the guy looked, but also in that moment, I recognized that this person symbolizes so much more than this. So much more than one singular human being. I felt angry. I felt helpless. And I'm a quite hopeful person because I always believe that tomorrow can be defined by the energies and the efforts and the planning and the thoughts and the will we put in today. But I felt hopeless because I've been here before. I've been in that moment before of anger, upsetness. I've been here before. And here I am again, which lets me know that I may be in that feeling, that position again next week, 2 weeks time, who knows? But the feeling hasn't left me. And I've been looking at ways in which for me to express and get that out. Hence why I chose to turn today's therapy hour into a mass therapeutic session. And perfectly defined there, it was traumatizing. And the word traumatizing comes from the word trauma. What we are going through right now is a collective trauma because something has happened to each and every one of us. Each and every one of us feels connected to that event. So it has happened to us. DSM-5, it's called 5 steps of defining post-traumatic stress disorder. Any of those, a physician could determine, all right, you know what, based on this, you're exhibiting this, we are going to diagnose you with PTSD. But what it does then is define it as something that's directly happened to you, or something that's happened to your loved one, or something you've seen that's happened to your loved one, or something like war, earthquake that's happened and you've seen and you feel sad and you feel affected by it. But I do believe what is occurring right now is post-traumatic stress disorder for a lot of people. Not only from one singular incident, but I could reel off names and events that occurs every day, it seems. Now, this is not about thinking of things logically. This is about getting to the core, the gut of what you're feeling, how you're feeling. All right? And so that's how I was feeling. And how I continue to feel. And my mood was visibly affected. And I thought, and I got my pen out, and I just started writing different things. Like, why am I getting charged more than you? Why am I getting charged more than somebody else? I'm paying more tax than you are. So which means I can't invest in my family, because the tax I'm paying is the melanin tax, right? Oh, you got melanin, I'm sorry, so you're in the higher tax bracket. So we're going to charge you a little bit more. Those are the feelings in which I'm feeling. I felt angry, I felt loud, I felt I couldn't find the answers. And for me, it was quite frustrating. I felt frustrated. And I couldn't hear anything else from anybody else. And I just wanted to stay singularly in that moment. And the attractiveness of anger is that you want to stay in there. You want to stay angry. You want to stay enraged. So for me, I want to talk about that. But at the same time, I also want to look at ways in which we can start healing from it. We can start looking at ways in which we can start finding a way to collectively heal. Because we're collectively going through this, right? So let's find a way to collectively heal from it. All right? So if you want to jump on and just say a few words on how you're feeling, feel free. The floor is yours. All right? So I'll leave that offer open for the next few seconds as you say, go through it. So for today, I looked at structuring the session on how can I help, how can I assist people in feeling some form of therapy, because it is the therapy hour after all, so there has to be a form of therapy in there. But what we're talking about right now is therapy. Therapy doesn't always have to be this structured and we're going to have to look at this and certain aspects of things. Therapy is talking and being heard and listening and supporting and guiding. And hopefully today we're all doing that for each other. You're doing that for your friends, your family, and very importantly, you're doing that for yourself. So hopefully we'll be able to do that, and hopefully you can do that for me as well. All right? So feel free to come in. Men, women, child, I'm not sure there's going to be any children that's allowed Instagram account. But there's an opportunity for us to go through it. Now, I didn't quite answer the question I was asked previously, which was, why am I feeling this more than previously? Because I watched a man die before my eyes in such a way that was so intimate. And his face was facing me. I felt guilty that I couldn't do anything. I was watching a video and I was shouting at the camera. I was shouting at my phone. I was going, stop it, get off it, come on, do something. I was imploring people miles away to do something, anything. I felt like I was watching a live lynching of someone. And I use lynching deliberately as well because of the racial connotation of that word. That's why it hit home so personally for me, because I was watching him and it was imploring stop, for the man to stop, to get off him. More important for me is not only did he say, I can't breathe, he said, please. He said, please, I can't breathe. In that moment, he found the manners to say, please. To me, that humanized him even more so. That said a lot to me, even more so. Thank you for allowing me to share that. And in therapy, what we look at is, how do we heal from an experience? Can you heal from an ongoing experience? Yes, because if we can't, then there's no point in me doing the job I do. And if we can't, then there's no point in a lot of situations for us to keep going on. And keep going on, we must. And keep going on, we shall. So, how do we heal? How do we heal from the ongoing, and that's the point that is made there, ongoing experience? Because you can heal from an experience that's occurred, that's happened to you, because it's post-traumatic stress disorder, which means it is after an event. But the beauty and the nuance in that question from Alwyn is, can you heal from an ongoing experience? So it's not post-traumatic stress disorder. It now becomes traumatic stress disorder, ongoing traumatic stress disorder, present traumatic stress disorder. That's where it is. And the strategies I look at, and practitioners like myself will look at, is how can we put certain structures and strategies so the client internalizes that. So every single time that experience is repeated, they can connect to those strategies that we've worked on for weeks, months, in some cases years, in dealing with. So I'm going to cover that element of how to heal from it. What are the structures and the strategies in which I use to deal with clients within it, especially within this collective trauma, as I've stated. There's a lot of comments coming in, and I do want to touch on every one of them. And I will. I promise you I'll get to every one of them as I can. If I can't read it, or if I haven't touched on it, just jump on and say, Nathaniel, this is how I'm feeling. All right? You can put your cap real low if you don't feel like showing your face. But the ongoing effect of it is that as soon as I heal, something else has happened. As soon as I think I'm getting better, something else has happened. Hence the hopelessness. And hope is a huge factor of recovery. Hope is a vital element of mental health recovery. Because you are hoping that you believe that things will improve. That's what hope is, right? Things will get better. Now, if you are receiving an onslaught of continuous trauma, continuous traumatic events, then the hopelessness, the hope within you is chipped and chipped away. And then we start normalizing it. That's why I believe in some cases this can be defined or diagnosed as complex trauma. If we've been experiencing it from childhood to adulthood, there's no respite. So much so, what happens in some cases is we internalize the trauma and we start believing trauma to be true. We start siding with the abusers, sometimes justifying their behavior. You know what? Yes, my nose is a little bit broad. Yes, I am a little loud. Yeah, statistically, a lot of our people are in jail. Oh, they're richer. So you start internalizing, and before you realize it, you are doing the job of the abuser for them. And that's why it's so difficult to treat complex trauma, because it goes on for so long from childhood. And the reason why it's so powerful, complex trauma, is because it starts usually from childhood. And children are growing up, their brain is very soft. All our brain is very soft. But I use the word soft to describe. It's very malleable, it's still fresh. It can be contorted to different ways of thinking. So they are quite fragile. So at that point, experiencing those things can change the way they think, can change the way they look at the world, can change the way, the wiring of the brain. That's how powerful a traumatic event can be. And it takes a long time of therapy to start peeling and peeling. And once you even get to the core of it, you have to convince the client that all the things you believed is not true. You have to connect to that inner child and understand that, listen, for all these years you felt this is true, but I'm here to show you that you've been living your life on a web of lies, deceit, and hatred. And you do not deserve that. You are worthy of so much more than that. And every time something traumatic happens, there's a part of us that's angry. And if we've experienced it for such a long time, you will have people come and say, well. And when you say, well, what it does then, its purpose is to somehow discredit your lived experience. So in therapy, we look at your feelings, your experiences, and we look at ways of validating that. Because I've sat here many times talking about our feelings are not always right. What I mean by that is we can't be led by our feelings. This is facts. In this situation, our feelings have a voice to be heard. Before we dismiss it, we hear it out. We hear it out. So, good point there about learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is another tool that's used, a powerful tool, to keep a victim of abuse down. A victim of abuse dependent on the abuser, to the point in which you start validating the importance and the power of this person that's actually abusing you. And by doing so, you are belittling yourself, your own worth. And you are looking to the abuser as your savior. It's very powerful, it's very deep. It goes beyond, I'm angry because a man got killed in front of me. It really, really does. And for those that may not feel that, may not see that, I implore you to just take a moment and suspend your disbelief. The same way you suspend your disbelief when you go and watch a superhero movie. We can suspend our disbelief for a moment to be able to believe what we're watching is real. In this case, I implore you to do the same and listen to the voices that have lived it, that are living it because of an ongoing experience. Take their hand, or let them take your hand to guide you through their experiences, to show you, to describe to you how they are feeling. Okay? This session is becoming as heavy as I truly believe it will be. I'm sorry you're feeling the way you're feeling. I'm sorry I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. I'm sorry you feel targeted. I'm saddened by your sadness because I'm sad as well. I'm upset. I am in a state right now of countertransference. Now, countertransference in sessions is me projecting onto my clients my own feelings, my own thoughts. So that is what I'm doing right now, but I believe this is a collective therapy session in which I am also a client as well as a therapist. Now, to the therapy, the second stage of the therapy part. How would I help a client heal from this? I'll give an example of a session I had with a client. And the session I had with the client was about, the client came to me about something totally unrelated to race. The client came to me exhibiting violent and abusive behavior. The client came to me to seek help in dealing with his abusive and violent behavior and his inability to manage those feelings that manifested into an exertion of abusive behavior. And within going through therapy, what I identified within the sessions was the core or the ground zero or the smoking gun, any analogy you want to use, slot in there, of this person's issue, where his experience as a child in England. His experience as a child started off with very cute boy, sweet aunties would take you out, like, you know the kind of sweet little boys that like handbags, right? That your aunties will come and pick them up, like, yeah, I'm going shopping, I'll take him with me. That sweetness. And grew up in an environment predominantly white. However, there was no awareness or acknowledgement of his blackness. His friends were white and black and Indian. A spectrum of humanity were his friends. And through nursery, primary school, well liked, he had a good life outside the home. Now, something changed when this cute, sweet boy started secondary school. And this story of a real session is not limited to this one client. This story is also about many more clients like this particular one. The reason why I'm using this as an example, it will become clear shortly. That within this session, and talking about his lived experience, he said to me that you're the first one that's listening to me and not telling me that, come on, let's move on. You're the first one that's actually giving me the time of day to express what I'm feeling. And in that moment, I encouraged him to continue talking. In that moment, I encouraged him to speak his truth. And he described how previous friends, people he went to their homes for tea, yes, he described it as tea, so that would describe a certain level of Britishness. People's homes he went to for tea now were avoiding him. And this culminated in name calling from ex-friends, and he couldn't understand it. He went home and cried, and his mom described to him, well, some people are just ignore them. But he couldn't ignore it because there was a paradigm shift in his life and the way he saw the world. There was a paradigm shift to the way he was seen. He now saw himself from the eyes of others. very significant. When we start seeing ourselves from other people's eyes, and that is our sole, that's our sole view of ourselves. We are now slaves to other people's views and opinions, and we give value to that. Now, in secondary school, he was harassed, he was verbally, racially abused continuously. He described, sometimes he'd be like, okay, am I going to get home from school today without being chased by grown men? If I walk past the pub, names would be thrown at me. From cute, sweet, black boy, he couldn't understand where the shift came from. And the reason why I am saying this is because he grew to an adult that became very angry and also very paranoid, because he described how he'll be on the train, on the tube, walking down the street, and if a white person looked at him, he would puff his chest out. He will be quite antagonistic because he's expecting one outcome. He now starts fantasizing about hurting white people and visually thinking about all the white people that have hurt him in the past. Now, for me, this is clearly a psychological disorder based on his experience of his traumatic experience. The reason why I'm using this example, one, because I want people to feel connected, that your experiences are validated, your experiences are worthy, they are real. You haven't got an attitude problem. You may do, but it's got nothing to do with race. And if it does, it is born out of traumatic experience. The second reason why I brought this up is because I took this session. In therapy, therapists, we have what we call a supervisor. A supervisor is not as you would expect someone standing over you and saying, what are you doing? You need to do this or you need to do that. Not quite. A supervisor is there to be a therapeutic aid to a therapist, to discuss sessions and also discuss how we are left feeling as therapists. And I took this to a supervisor and I described, because I felt connected to what my client was telling me. I felt connected to his story and his lived experience. And I knew what he was experiencing has affected him to the point in which it affected the way he saw himself and the way he saw the world. He saw himself as a threat, as a violent man, so he acted up to it. That helplessness, this is what I am. Okay, this is what I am then. I'm a thug. Okay, I'm a thug. And he lived up to that. If you recall a few minutes ago, I talked about when you start seeing yourself solely from the eyes of others, you become what you feel others are seeing or what they see. And that's what's going on there. And I took this to my supervisor, and my supervisor dismissed the relevance. That's the word, because I recall it. The relevance of that event. Now, I'm going to go into my little notes I made for today's session. I'm going to talk about DSM-5. Okay, DSM-5, as I've stated in previous sessions, is the Bible of psychologists. All right? The Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5, the 5th edition, let's say. So there's been DSM, DSM 2, 3, 4, and 5 is the most updated one, right? So in there, it lists 5 criterion for PTSD, for diagnosing PTSD. So I'm just going to go through some of them for you, so to see some of what we look at when we are trying to determine, or when we're trying to diagnose, or when we're trying to look at ways in identifying what the client is presenting with. So bear with me as I read this out. So A is, does it alphabetical or rather than numerical? I think it looks fancier, right? So we've got criterion A, on the DSM-5 for PTSD, diagnosing PTSD. Identifiable index trauma. What that means is an event. So, identifiable index trauma regarding experience. So that's an event. Something has happened that we can identify that has occurred. The second thing looks at re-experiencing trauma. So you're going through it again and it's happened to you again. Third one is looking at avoiding trauma reminders. That means if this happened to me here, I'm going to try my best to avoid it, to run away from it, to not try and think about it. Number 4 is negative mood and thoughts. As described earlier in today's session, I think we tick that box. Fifth one, E, criterion E, is hyper-arousal. Our sensitivity to the feelings that we're going through. Our sensitivity to anything that happens there. Some may describe as when we have flashbacks or when certain things happen and it triggers us, we are aroused very easily. So that is exactly what goes on in that situation, right? So looking at that, one point here in DSM-5 is an event that's happened to you directly or your loved one, with people you know. So sometimes, based on that description, some practitioners do not diagnose PTSD due to racial trauma. They do not diagnose PTSD for people that are experiencing, as you all have experienced the trauma this week, because it didn't happen to you directly. That's why it's very important to call out people like me in my profession that are not working culturally. Now, I work culturally, and what that means is my client that I've described to you could look at me and feel that I can talk to this guy and I can tell him this, and I feel comfortable and confident enough that he's going to understand me. For you to have successful therapy, the working alliance has to be good. The working alliance is a phrase we use for describing the relationship, the bond, the way the therapist and the client interact, and the confidence that they both have in each other. Do you trust me enough to express your inner thoughts, feelings to? And working culturally enabled my client to be able to talk to me, because I did not hide my blackness away. I sat there as I am right now, and I acknowledged him, acknowledged his speech patterns, his references, his musical taste. I acknowledged him. I saw him as a human being, not as a caricature, not as an angry black man, or as some of you may have experienced, angry black woman. I acknowledged his identity, individual, and also the collectiveness of it. And from that, this person that my supervisor once described as a very angry man started exploring other things beyond just anger. Started describing the experiences, the pain, the hurt, the sadness, the sense of neglect, not from family, but from his community, that as a child, he felt connected to. The same community that disregarded him, that discarded him, that ignored him, that made him feel that he wasn't worthy. So it's very important for us to work culturally. So after saying that, what I want to explore right now is, how do we heal from it? For my job, These are the steps in which I take in order for me to heal with clients. Affirmation is the first step. My client needs to feel, and we are now the collective clients right now, we need to feel that we are worthy. That things that are happening to us are not happening to us because we deserve it. They're not happening to us because we are somehow broken, damaged. We are somehow worthy of that treatment. We are less human. So there needs to be affirmation there. And I will suggest, in order to start healing, there needs to be that positive affirmation of who you are. Who are you? What's your name? What's your history? What's your direct family lineage? Your favorite meal? The song you love dancing to? When you go to family events, how they make you laugh and smile? What is your culture that you feel connected to? Where are you from? Not what's on your passport, because that's an application. That is by virtue of where you were born or where you applied for registration. Where do you feel connected to? And I want you to connect to that feeling, that origin, and that pride, and that love. That self-love is the initial medicine that needs to be prescribed. For me, it is connecting to my African origins. But it's also connecting to my family origins. My initial family origin. My sisters, my friends, my family, my uncles, my dad, my mom. Connecting to that. Looking at pictures of me as a little boy. Oh, skinny and scrawny. Some may argue that not much has changed apart from this. Connecting to your own humanity. Vital in therapy. Vital in dealing and trying to work against the ongoing trauma. We see these things happening to us because we do personalize it. It is happening to us. You may live in London and not LA, but it's happening to you. We've all got our experiences that makes us feel marginalized to the point it affects us, afflicts us. And there are countless of examples in which we see it, we feel it, and some may argue the subtlety of the racism that is experienced in countries like the United Kingdom is so damaging, because if someone asks you to describe it, you're like, but I want to, no, but it's there. And someone is questioning you and they start describing you as paranoid. I don't know what you're talking about. You're playing the race card. So that is even more damaging because you start questioning yourself. My client was questioning himself until he saw a therapist that looked like him, that understood what it was coming from without him saying a word. And that is so important in therapy, to find a therapist that you feel comfortable with. I've had female clients that some may want to see a female therapist because they feel more comfortable with that. So if a black man or a black woman wants to talk about rage and generational effect of racism on them, they may not want to come to a therapist and sit down and say, I want to talk about generational racism and how it's affected me, the way I look at the world, the way my teachers did not think I could do well in certain school, the way people did not have any hope for me. I want to talk about that. So it's very important that we deal with that. That's the first thing. Now, my time is coming up, and what I plan to do is do another live immediately after this. So I'm going to end this. So this will be part 1. If you want to stick with me, please do. And then I'll be able to go through the next stages. I'll see you in the next 30 seconds. Okay? See you soon.